Hi, and welcome to the next of our webinars. And today we'll be talking through project management and Kanban. I'm joined today by Steve Page of Page Consulting, who will be taking you through today's session. Just a few bits of housekeeping to start off with. We do encourage as many questions as we can, and you should see a little questions function in the webinar control panel. Do put your questions in here and we'll answer those the best we can as and when they come up. I do suggest that you put the questions in as you think about them, because that allows it to pop up on our side. There's a little bit of a delay, I'm afraid, in it coming up on our side, and we'll make sure we've got plenty of time at the end of today's session to answer those questions. Also, if you want to copy the slides, they are in the handout section of the downloads in PDF form, so you should be able to click on there and download those slides at the end of today's session. This program is funded by the Humber Growth Hub as part of the Grow My SME program, of which there are a number of different workshops available. Please do go and have a look at the Humber Growth Hub's website and have a look at the events section on there to see what other programs and other events that they've got running. There's some really interesting webinars going on at the moment, and those are all scheduled in now. So go and have a look at those and get yourselves booked onto those, because there are some really interesting workshops. If anybody also wants any one-to-one support, again, please do get in contact with the Humber Growth Hub. You can either have a look at the growmysme.co.uk website or give the Humber Growth Hub a ring and they'll be able to help you there. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Steve, who will take you through today's workshop. Steve, over to you.
Fine, thank you very much, Peter. And good morning and welcome to everybody. Welcome to the How Kanban Can Help You Become a Project Management Guru. It's in a number of parts. Part one today is looking at the Kanban method. So we've got about a couple of hours that I'm going to spend with you, but it might just be worth giving you a little bit of an insight into my background so that you can sort of see where I'm coming from and some of the experiences I've had around sort of the lean manufacturing, lean concepts, and many of the tools associated with that. Of which Kanban is one of the primary tools and techniques involved in that lean manufacturing toolkit. My background is in the aerospace industry. I spent 23 odd years working for what was British Aerospace, is now BAE Systems, and sort of worked my way up the ranks through the sort of engineering discipline, to become the youngest chief engineer in the company. The department that I ran, or division that I ran, was the training systems and simulation division, and that was primarily involved with innovating and developing training equipment that would support aircrew and ground crew operations. So it was all of the training materials and equipment that would go into the training schools around the world in support of the purchase of military aircraft. What I also did was spend a significant number of years as a project manager. Managing the innovation, research and development and technology development programs, where we partnered with a number of international organizations as well in order to be able to make some breakthrough innovative products that were quite disruptive to the marketplace. And as part of those experiences, we were looking to find ways in which we could enhance our project management skills and deliver on some very challenging projects that we were given. where we had to think out the box somewhat and look for some more innovative ways in which we could overcome some of the constraints of the traditional project management methods and techniques. I have since left the aerospace industry and set up my own consultancy and training company, which I've been running now for about 17, 18 years, and really tried to bring a lot of that knowledge and experience that I'd gained to help local businesses to develop and grow, looking at effective management, introduction of lean concepts, team building, and a whole variety of other tools and techniques that will help them to grow in a sustainable way. And today, I personally, my company obviously a lot more, have been supporting well over 1,000 businesses in the Yorkshire and Humber region. So I've sort of been able to pick up a significant amount of knowledge and experience with businesses across many sectors in the region. So a little bit about me, just to sort of set the scene so that you can sort of see where I'm coming from in terms of us walking through this incredibly powerful and important topic area. So what have we got lined up for you today? Kanban is one of those things that you may or may not have come across before, but it's one of those things that to really sort of understand it, it's good if we take a little bit of time out to understand its origins, how it's developed and evolved into what it is today, so that you can really understand and get your heads around it much more easily, and be able to sort of see the power that is available by using it. We'll also compare and contrast using the Kanban method in project management with some of the traditional project management methodologies. So again, you can see the differences and where it suits the situation better, or where the traditional approach might be more appropriate. We'll have a little look at how Kanban is being applied to managing projects, but not just projects. I mean, projects in terms of commercial contracts. So activities that are going on in businesses that would support the development, design, manufacture, and distribution of products that you may be involved with your business. We'll also have a little look at the sort of conventional Kanban boards, which are sort of physically in place around a lot of factories and businesses, and look at, and particularly in the light of the COVID situation, use of technology and virtual teams, and how Kanban can be used in a virtual environment as well as in that sort of physical, practical environment where you may have already seen it or are using it. We'll pick up any questions and hopefully I'll be able to answer them at the back end if you have got any. As Peter said, just click that function button and that will enable you to send something through. So that's what we've got lined up. We'll take a break sort of midway. I tend to find that, you know, an hour of concentration, you need to have 5 minutes just to recharge your coffee and then come back sort of with a fresh mind again. So sort of midway through, sort of around 11 o'clock time, I'll be just breaking 5 minutes to give you that opportunity to just recharge your coffee, and we can sort of pick up the second part. Right, without further ado, let's crack on and let's just start to have a little look at some of the origins of Kanban. So, Kanban, what is it? We hear it mentioned a lot in sort of lean terms. And actually it originated from two Japanese words that come together. Kan, meaning sign, and ban, meaning a board. So Kanban is translated into English as signboard. So we're looking at Kanban as a signboard. Now, it originates back really from the 1600s, when Japan entered a period of stability and economic growth following many years of war and social upheaval. Towns and streets became crowded with shops, and businesses were fighting for customer awareness and attraction. Shop owners made custom shop signs, kanbans, to draw in the customers. As you can see from this ancient street that has survived through to modern days. So these shop signs informed people of the kind of products and services that each shop offered, similarly to the way that they do today. The Kanban era developed as Kanban sign designers started to compete artistically, crafting their signboards to make them stand out from others in the street. This practice continues with the modern shaped neon designs that we see today. Quite a contrast, you may see, in terms of how it evolved to where we are today. So the birth of Kanban really came in to its sort of life as it's been picked up and used for other things. But primarily its purpose is to communicate a message, to communicate content clearly and concisely. Now, you know, if you can't read Japanese, then you might argue that those kanbans are not clearly and concisely communicating the message, but where they are located in Japan, the Japanese people reading them, they'll do exactly that. So, Toyota were the ones who primarily evolved the use of Kanban to the sort of level and understanding that we have it today, taking it up from that retail application to use it in a much more sophisticated and comprehensive manner. So in the sort of 1940s, just after, or 1940s to 1945, the back end of World War II, and after World War II, Toyota was in a very poor position. It was struggling to compete effectively, particularly with the American giants, General Motors, and some of those other American car companies. Was making a loss and was needing to find a way to do something radically different if it was ever going to become a main player on the global stage. The managing director, a guy called Toyoda, set a challenge out to his workforce, insofar as they needed to produce only what was needed, when it was needed, and in the amounts needed, because they had a situation where they were manufacturing vehicles to stock. The market was evolving and changing massively, and items of stock were not being sold and were being obsoleted quite quickly, and further worsening the situation that Toyota had. And a young engineer called Taishi Ono really took up that challenge as far as Toyota was concerned. And he threw himself into the challenge and really looked at the root causes behind the high levels of inefficiency and ineffectiveness that Toyota were experiencing at that time. And he observed and came up with 7 separate root causes that were creating problems within Toyota, which he then needed to find some effective solutions in order to be able to deal with them. They referred to them as muda, Japanese for waste. And the 7 topics, and it's worth us just taking the time out to look at these. And for those of you that already know them, just bring them back to the front of your minds. For those who've not come across them yet, it's important to understand them because Kanban has come about, or the reapplication of Kanban has come about in an attempt to find effective solutions to overcome these particular types of waste and loss in a manufacturing environment. So the 7 key wastes that Taishi identified were transportation. So this is where products were being moved about, where there was no actual value being added in their movement. If you have a factory, it's full of stock, the items that you need to have are always behind something else, so you're having to move stuff out of the way in order to get to them, greater distances, you're shuffling stuff around, constantly juggling to get the items that you want available. And it can consume a lot of time, it can slow down the throughput rate, and it can add to the costs of it running within a business. And the more stock and raw materials that you've got cluttering up the place, the greater is the amount of movement and wasted time and effort that goes with that. Inventory or stock, buying it ties up a whole series of amounts of money that could have been used for other things, and it adds to all of these other wastes in terms of transportation, as we just touched on, because we're having to move it around backwards and forwards in a way that isn't what the customer would be prepared to pay for in the price that he's wanting to pay. So with the stock, we're looking at all of the items, whether the raw materials, a part finished, or whatever, that are clogging up the production process, sat around waiting for somebody to do something with them, with the risk of them being damaged or lost as a result of them not having a particular place to keep them safely. Motion, this is him observing that people or equipment moving or walking around more than they actually needed to be doing so was inefficient. So somebody might have a job to do, but the tools that they need aren't in the location that they're doing the job, so they're going to have to trip backwards and forwards to try and find them, to bring them together. Those tools might be needed by somebody else later, who's then going to have to come away and find where they've gone to. And you can get all of this sort of wasted time and effort, this highly inefficient and ineffective activity taking place within a factory environment. You may recognize some of it taking place in your own business environment, whether you're manufacturing or not. Waiting time, so this is where people are hanging around waiting to be able to start a job, but the materials or the instructions or something else hasn't been provided, so they're unable to be able to do it. Overproduction is where you are producing more than you've actually sold, so you're producing for stock. So all of the money and the effort going into items that hasn't got a customer waiting for them, that you've then got to pay to have stockpiled, waiting for somebody to buy, at the risk of them being obsoleted, or you're having to discount them on price because the trends or fashion has changed. Over processing, this is really around the design and the engineering and the tooling associated with doing work. So you're not geared up with exactly the right tools in the right place to be able to quickly and effectively assemble a number of items together, but you're having to use outdated tooling. There's lots of work associated with joining parts together. You're just making it a whole lot more complicated and difficult than you might or could have done otherwise. And defects are where you have got something that's been damaged or wasn't made right or doesn't fit, and then you've got all of the corrective and rework associated with having to do that. So Taichi observed all of these particular features and factors that were going on in Toyota and started to put his thinking cap on about how on earth he was going to be able to solve some of them. His biggest challenge really was in terms of looking at how he could get only the items that were needed to be pulled up through the suppliers and pulled through the manufacturing and production lines to meet a particular customer demand, so that you didn't have to be manufacturing blind for stock and all of the consequences associated with that. And he was looking to try to create some sort of communication system, long before we had computers and laptops and desktops and all the rest of it. Looking to try and find some sort of communication system whereby when a demand came along, he was able to pass that set of instructions all the way down the line in order to be able to get the right items coming together at the right time. So to achieve Toyota's aim of producing what was needed at the right time, just sort of go back to that picture again. So what was needed, when it was needed, and in the amounts it was needed, Taichi had to find a way to keep the stocks low whilst allowing a smooth and efficient flow of work through the process. His challenge was to communicate that a new product was needed and that this message to propagate its way back to the production lines and eventually to the supply chains, to the raw material suppliers, as I've just mentioned. After investigating how supermarkets in the USA managed to keep their shelves stocked with just the right amount of each product, he established a system that used paper index cards for signaling and tracking the demand in the Toyota factory. And he named this system Kanban because his index cards clearly and concisely communicated the information that they needed to do so to those people that needed that information. So the Kanban index card system, once he'd piloted and got it working, actually worked very well, and they could see significant reductions in the stockpiles of items. So the factories started to clear out, become much more organized, and less transportation and movement of items, because only the parts and the materials that were actually needed to be brought in to meet a particular sale were being done so. That improved the product throughput rates, because you weren't having to hunt around amongst piles of stock for what particular bits and pieces you might need, and have all of the movement, the transportation and the risk of damage things damaging things as part of that. But it also provided a high level of visibility of the whole process, because people could see where things were in a factory at what particular time based upon what the index cards were saying. So by 1963, Toyota had adopted the Kanban index card signaling system for all of its products across the entire company. So in just a matter of a 20-year period, they had fundamentally and utterly, radically changed their operation based upon the results that they've been able to see from the early piloting that Taiichi had put in place. Toyota went from operating at a loss in the mid to late 40s to becoming the global competitor it is today as a result of Taiichi's efforts to lean up the factory operation, of which the Kanban index card signaling system was absolutely at its core. Not surprisingly, Taiichi rose through the ranks to become executive vice president in 1975. His work gave rise to a new meaning of Kanban, not the retail shop signs anymore, but a comprehensive information, paper-based communication system that enabled complex factory operations to be much more effectively managed and controlled. And those techniques collectively were known as the Toyota production system, or as we've now more commonly described them, as the lean manufacturing system. So as the Toyota production system gained popularity, project managers from different kinds of industries tried to apply its core attributes and methodologies to their work. The most significant breakthrough came from within the software industry between sort of 2003 and 2008, when the recession kicked in. Around that time, software development project management had come under particular scrutiny, with some remarkable and widespread failures, significant overspends and late deliveries, with many software development programs being cancelled, and with a poor quality of software hitting the market at sort of alpha or beta level, rather than the refined every function works when it's first launched. The industry had already been moving away from the traditional, more rigid approaches that were used to sort of plan and develop software, and was starting to adopt more agile and lean methodologies as part of that. Elements of the lean software development, combined with agile management, the use of Scrum teams, all had a significant impact on coming together to become what we now know as the Kanban method. Now, I'm not going to be touching too much on the agile management today, and I'm not going to be touching on Scrum teams particularly in this session either. We've got a couple of workshops coming up over the next week or 3 weeks, where I'll be focusing on each of those techniques in particular, so that by the end of the month, I think we will have had 4 parts to this webinar, of which this is just the first part, looking at Kanban, Agile and Scrum team use collectively together to create a comprehensive and powerful alternative to the traditional project management methodologies that we're sort of all quite used to and familiar with. So let's just take a moment out to have a little look at these traditional features. You'll be more than familiar with many of them, I'm sure, but it's worth just taking a moment out to sort of have a closer look and see what we can draw out from that, because that will then help us to really see the difference that the Kanban method brings as an alternative method that might be better used in terms of certain project situations, but also in terms of the day-to-day running of your business, particularly if you are involved in the manufacture or creation of products, to which I include software as part of that. So, traditional project management fundamentally has a number of features or attributes associated with it. For those of you that have been involved in project management, you'll know this well. For others who maybe haven't, then it's worth me just sort of explaining a little bit about those sort of characteristics and features. With a traditional project managed approach, what we would be looking at is a project being a bit of a one-off. So it's got a clear start to it, and it's got a clear end or close point to it. And what we would do is we would gain as detailed an understanding of what it was that we were looking to do and create a project brief or project scope that fundamentally specifies the work that needs to be done. Now, if that project is going to be following a process, a set of steps and stages, which aren't too dissimilar to other projects that have been run, then that's great, because what we can do is we can take the experiences that we've got from those and we can read them across and adapt them to the management of the particular project that we are focusing on. And that enables us to put together some fairly detailed plans where we're step by step breaking out the activities. We're looking at the overall time frame by which the project needs to have been completed, and there's a considerable focus and emphasis placed on achieving the full delivery within a budget to a certain level of quality by a fixed time. And that puts tremendous pressure on us in terms of getting the planning right. Now, if you're involved in innovation or some quite risky or poorly defined innovative development programs where there isn't another example of how somebody might have effectively planned their way through that, that makes the whole planning challenge so much more tricky and difficult, and exposes the project to much greater risk. In addition to getting the planning right, there are also considerations needed to be given to stakeholders. Now, project stakeholders are people who would have an interest in the project. Either it's something they don't want to see happen, or it's something that they do, or maybe you're just neutral about it, but they still need to be kept informed. So you've got these political considerations that you have to weigh in as well, not just focusing in on the tasks in hand, the resources that are going to be needed, when and where those resources need to be deployed. So you've got this significant upfront planning. The quality of the planning and the accuracy of the planning is absolutely key, because if it's poorly planned, you're going to be staring at failure. Things will be going off all over everywhere that will be happening which you hadn't even considered, that are not on your plan, and therefore probably won't even be seeing them or aware of them until they create a major problem for you. So a tightly well-controlled plan gives you an ability to then have something which hopefully won't be too far away from what you were looking at trying to achieve, but gives you an ability to monitor and manage it as it works its way through the execution phase of that work. Poorly planned, or projects that have stakeholders that might be actively trying to derail it or create other issues because they're not being kept informed or looked after, can also create some instabilities that add to problems. Now, with the plan-based traditional approach, you have your plan, you communicate it out, you get your commitment from the various resources and individuals, and you step back and you leave them to get on with it without trying to micromanage over the top of their shoulders, because that only adds to a variety of complications. And you will design in a series of review points so that you can keep touching base to make sure that the projects are proceeding in the way that you want them to. More often than not, people will tell you that they're on track, but it's only when it actually comes to putting everything together to make it work do you find that they weren't. So this lack of visibility that project managers actually have in terms of the day-to-day nitty-gritty and being able to deploy resources to overcome problems quickly and early enough is an ongoing risk that makes the life of project managers somewhat difficult. So that's the traditional method that we tend to use, and this sort of sequence of starting, planning, executing, monitoring and managing, and then closing the project off is the approach that we adopt. There's a key emphasis on linear processes, documentation to get the specification out, communicate it around, the upfront planning that I was talking about, and also to place priorities on the things that could, if they go wrong, push the timescale or the budget right out. We often refer to that as the critical path process. So as project managers, we're wanting to understand what that critical path is, what those particular items are, so that we can give greater priority to make sure that they happen, because any delay directly will push the program out. Hope I'm not putting you off to be a project manager if you were aspiring to become one. It can be a very rewarding job when projects run well. Another consideration is you working to sort of time and budget, but in reality, whilst they might be goals and fixed into the specification, they're really variables. It's the requirements that are fixed. So the set of deliverables, once achieved, will enable you to meet the criteria to close the project. How much time and effort and cost has gone into getting you there may not match the budgets that you were originally set and given. For every step, there are tools and techniques that are defined that can enable you to work through that particular process, and some of those tools can be quite excellent and can help project managers significantly de-risk. We often use what we call a waterfall method or a cascade method, and I'll show you what I mean in the picture on the next slide. But where we do a set of activities that, when they're completed, then enable us to do the next bit. So it's a bit like water coming down a waterfall. It goes over the top and runs down to hit the next level, where we are then able to, it can then flow along and go down. So there's this connectivity, this interdependence associated with some of the tasks, which if we allow one to overrun, can then have a ripple through effect throughout the rest of the program. And if we are late in discovering that because of our periodic review points, then that means there's time lost that we'll never be able to recover. So given that the methodology has a number of shortcomings, there can still be some significant benefits that come from it. Insofar as we have a group of activities in the project that we can clearly define, and we can set the objectives so that everybody is clear on what it is that they need to do and set the stall out for. We have some well-defined and controllable processes that we can use that really help everybody to understand what those key steps are. There's a lot of documentation, so that's around for reference, around for instruction, around to set quality standards, and therefore people shouldn't be short of the information that they need in order to be able to undertake the tasks that they're undertaking. And there is a lot of accountability insofar as individuals are allocated certain tasks that they have to do within a certain time period and within a certain set number of hours, or there's a budget tied to it. So you very much hear this sort of mantra in terms of plan the work, or plan your work, and then work your plan. So get the plan in place, really drill out the details, and then work to the plan and try to get everybody else to and recover it back onto plan wherever there's something that might cause it to slip up, be delayed, get derailed, or whatever else. So the sort of charts that you may very well be familiar with are these things. We call them Gantt charts, and these enable us to visualize all of the activities that we're planning. They're our sort of a performance dashboard. They enable us to see what activities, which are often listed down on this left-hand side, need to be undertaken. There's often a whole series of additional columns which have start date, resources, elapsed time, what interdependencies might exist, etc. And for those of you that are using professional project management software, you'll be very familiar with all of that detail. And by filling in all of those columns, they can automatically generate these visualizations of the plan. And the Gantt chart is one visualization. There are others as well, network diagrams that look like process flow charts that show you in a flowchart block diagram format the individual order to which tasks might be needing to be done, you know, across a number of sets of activities in parallel with each other. So with this sort of conventional Gantt chart, what we can see is that the black lines are the major sort of activity chunks, and then shown in blue we've got the sort of lower level detail. So we've got the sort of key activities that would need to be done. We've got the elapsed timeframes, and we've also got these sort of little review markers or milestones, as we call them, whereby at a particular point in time we would be checking to make sure that we can close that off. Some project managers may have little review markers dotted around all over these places, so that they're constantly tracking to make sure that the activities aren't going off track and are pretty much sort of staying where they need to be. So we can build these sophisticated plans, and then as we monitor and track them and things don't quite happen as we had hoped or thought they might do, we're able to update, modify, extend, refine, rebudget, retimescale, and reforecast what the future plan might need to be. So we've got this sort of rolling planning activity. But the project manager can be somewhat distant from all of the activities that are going on, and it's just really relying on quite a small subset of things that they have as their visual aids, their performance dashboards that enable them to see what's going on. So fundamentally, we are looking at a fairly structured, incredibly popular, well-known and well-established set of methodologies and set of standard performance visualization charts that are being commonly used across a wide variety of project activities, with some significant successes associated with them. But they're not the only methodology that is currently in use. So I think fundamentally with project management, you can't manage what you can't see. And with the traditional approach, you are that little bit more distant, and you're working with often individuals that are performing their own specific tasks who don't have the visibility of the Gantt charts and the network diagrams and those other visual aids that you have that guide and help you. They simply have an instruction to do a particular piece of work within a particular budget to a particular standard by a particular time. And if they are spinning plates and juggling other bits and pieces around, or they have a holiday, or they're off sick, or there are some other disruptions, or somebody gives them a higher priority task to do from another project that they then have to get on with, and what you thought they were working on has just been left parked until you come along and find out what has gone on. If they don't tell you, then you're going to find that your program is being impacted. And it's that situation, that interaction that project managers often have with individuals that are the resources that are implementing or executing those tasks that create these potential blind spots that make it so that introduce the risk that quite often is the fundamental root cause behind many of the difficulties and problems that they have. It's not the only problem, because what we have seen is in projects where they are innovative, new, and incredibly different, nobody's ever done them before. So how on earth would you know exactly what's going to be involved in doing them? That putting the plans together is almost an impossibility. So in something which is incredibly uncertain, nobody's ever done it before, trying to put a very precise and regulated set of plans in place that follow a set of project processes and that rely on people who are trying to find a way to achieve a goal but haven't ever done it before, to predict what might be involved in undertaking that, leaves the traditional approach poorly placed for getting the success out of it that you might want it to have. And this is where the Kanban method starts to come into its own play, because it's much less formalized and creates a focus on the resources coming together in a way that rapidly identifies where there are problems and issues and deals with those before they become a problem and the delay has created damage to the project and the reputation of the business. So I notice we're just sort of coming up to the halfway point. What I suggest we do is we just take a 5-minute break. I've set the scene in terms of the origins of Kanban and in terms of the sort of retail shop signs. And I've looked at how that has been reused and developed by Taishi Ono within the Japanese production system to bring it and the lean manufacturing concepts into the current time. And we've sort of touched on some of the problems that are associated with the traditional project management approach. So what I propose that we do after the break is have a look at how we can start to apply Kanban to managing projects, managing business. We'll take a moment out to have a look at what it is, how it works, the benefits of it, and how it can be picked up by yourselves and applied back into your own work environment. We can also touch on the use in sort of physical forums where people are all working together in a factory. Also with some of the latest video conferencing techniques, how we could set up virtual teams so that you can explore and set up running a Kanban method system via video conferencing links. So that's what we're going to be looking at after the break. So for the moment, if we just literally take 5 minutes out, I'll be back here at, was it 11 now, 11:05. Grab yourself a coffee, clear your head, come back, and we will pick up the specifics of Kanban and how it can be used in a very, very constructive and positive way within a project management environment. So I look forward to picking things up again in the very near future. Good morning. Welcome back to How Kanban Can Help You Become a Project Management Guru webinar. And to look at the Kanban system as we sort of move into the second half of this webinar. Whilst you're just getting sat back down again and rejoining, I think it's maybe worth just taking a moment out to touch on the sort of details of how the Toyota Kanban system worked in a little bit more detail than I've covered so far, so that you can then sort of see how things have evolved and developed. So with the Toyota system, Kanban cards were attached to every particular finished product. So these are little tiny index cards that have got quite a lot of information on them that are the communication and instruction system that Toyota used in order to be able to send messages through their whole production and supply chain lines that gave instruction that there was a demand for another product because it had been sold, and they could then organize themselves to pull the material back through from the supply chain and to be able to work on them in a timely way, such that only the right materials coming through at the right time could then come together to form the product or to satisfy that product demand, and to avoid all of the overproduction and cluttering with excess inventory that had been the issue at Toyota before. So once the product was sold, the cards would then move back into the production line. Factory operatives would only work on a new item when they received a card signaling a new order. And only once the number of pending Kanban cards had reached a defined threshold. So another efficiency saving was not to do everything as a one-off, although some parts of the production might operate that way, but to batch things up. So in some cases, demand was coming in sufficiently quickly that, say, 5 products might all be made in a batch, or 10 products might be made in a batch. So therefore, you would need to have collected the right number of Kanban index cards to meet the batch threshold for you to then be able to start the work. Every material used during production also had its own Kanban card attached to it, so enabling the demand signal to flow through the production lines and ending on external suppliers for raw materials or components. The way that the signaling system was set up enabled the right materials to be pulled through production at the right time and in the right volumes, and led to this concept that we refer to now as just-in-time, or JIT. And it was off the back of the, I'll just put my battery back on. It was off the back of Taishi's investigations and problem solving into removing the waste, those 7 items of waste and some associated losses that went with them, that culminated in the Kanban card index signaling system coming into play as a major management tool that assisted Toyota in their development and growth. So, what is a Kanban board? So, what we're looking at now is, in the same way that we had the project management Gantt chart that gave us a visual display of the plan of what was going on or should be going on in the project that we're running. And what we can now do is create an equivalent of that, a Kanban board, that is something that we can design and produce, that gives us that visualization of what is going on. So a Kanban or signboard from its origins is a visual display that can show a number of different things. So a very simple example there. So fundamentally, what we're wanting to do is have visibility of the work that needs to be done. Now we see that on the traditional Gantt chart plan, list of all the work that needs to be done. On the Gantt chart plan, what we show are the allocated times and the resources when that work should be taking place. With Kanban, what we want to know is what's actually being worked on, the work in progress. And I don't mean notionally allocated on a plan, but I mean actually happening in real life. And we also want to know when it's completed, as soon as it's completed, because we want to know if there's been a delay, a blockage, something that has caused something that should have happened by now not to have done so. So a Kanban board should be highly visible. It's a visual display system to help management. And if you remember that old adage, you can't manage what you can't see, it's no good hiding your display boards away where people can't see them. They need to be center stage so everybody can see them and everybody can understand what's going on. So a Kanban board should be highly visible, and the more visible, the better, with the best results likely to occur when a team is always able to see it. Now, for this presentation, this webinar, I've developed slides which have got a lot of text on them. I mean, sometimes it's better to just have a series of images and I just talk over them. But given the complexity and the detail associated with this system, what I've done is I've tried to get as much text in without making it too boring, so that when you get your download, a copy of the slides, hopefully there are all the memory jots and the little reminders dropped into the text for you, so that what I've just been talking about should come into play. I should come back to the forefront of your mind. So I hope that works for you. So our signboard needs to be showing what work we need to do, what's actually being worked on, and what's been completed. And we need to do that for all of the activities that we've currently got going on. Hence, we need to have some sort of structure, some framework, in order to be able to show that without drowning in detail. The other thing is that the display board really needs to reflect the activities that are going on in our factory or in our business. It's a visual representation of a personal, a team, or a department's value stream. Now, value streams are things that are tools within the lean manufacturing or the lean concept toolkit. And fundamentally, they are flow charts or process maps, as we call them, that block by block, schematic by schematic, show the order of the activities that take place in our processes. And the value streams are process maps that we have analysed in terms of their value content. And there's a very simple little test that we use. There are 3 types of added value. There's what we call real added value, and that is really defined by, is the customer prepared to pay for it? Because if the customer isn't prepared to pay for it, it's not real value being added. And this is how Taichi uncovered and observed some of his wastes, because when he saw items of stock being moved around in order to get the raw material that was at the back of the pile brought forward to go onto the production line, he was thinking, well, if I was a customer, I wouldn't be wanting to have to pay for all of that movement and that time and that delay. It's not what I would see as being contributing towards the manufacture of the product that I've just bought. So we can walk through our process maps, or we can walk through our processes and easier walk through our process maps. And we can do the real added value test to identify which specific activities add real value and which ones don't. Because if they don't, we need to ask the question, do we really need to do them? The second type of value added is what we call business value added. So while the customer might not be prepared to pay for them, there are things that we really want to do because they're important for our ability to manage or to maintain health and safety or to meet and comply with a variety of regulations. So producing documentation and paperwork, which might show that we've done health and safety risk assessments, which might show that we've done environmental checks, which might show that we are collecting data which enables us to ensure that the quality is right or that the production processes are running in the way that they should do. The customer might not be particularly wanting to pay for it, but as a business, we have to do it, and therefore it's business value added. It's being added to the value of the overall operation because it's important to the business. So we can go through that and we can identify those things that we're doing which are business value added. If it's not real added value, customer isn't prepared to pay for it. And it isn't business added value, the business sees no need in it being done either, then it has no value at all and should be streamlined out of the processes that we have. So there is some simple upfront process mapping, and I have spent years and years and years mapping processes, critiquing them, undertaking the real and business and no value added assessments to come up with some incredibly efficient streamlining of business operations. And I can't tell you how impactful and how powerful a technique it really is. So fundamentally, if you can undertake that exercise before you create your Kanban display boards, then that will save you quite a bit of time. The Kanban system will identify where things keep going wrong, so it will tell you anyway. But if you can get a whole lot of that removed before you even put the Kanban system in place, then it will mean that you've got a half-decent system to start with, and your Kanban can start to become really productive and isn't just constantly choking up because you've put really quite a poor set of processes that have evolved over some time into the display board framework. Sort of the process mapping and sort of value-added assessments can quite often be activities that we can do together as a team, where we're bringing the knowledge holders together and really sort of step by step walking through the processes, which may have evolved over time. There's a particular feature with businesses that grow insofar as they're excellent at learning and identifying where problems and issues are, and put a series of fixes in place. So what happens is, when the business is small, it may have a very efficient and effective set of processes in place, but when it starts to grow rapidly, is straining around the seams, there are problems starting to occur, of which workaround solutions have dropped into play and then become institutionalized. The way the processes evolve and grow can be very organic, and you can end up with some significantly over-engineered, weighty, highly inefficient and ineffective processes as time goes by. So great opportunity to step back and bring in some fresh eyes to help you really understand what's going on and streamline it down. So once you've got that sort of in place and you've got the key main parts of the process, from a visual display board point of view, you don't want to go into every single process step. You're really wanting to keep it relatively high level, because if you do, your frameworks are going to be so monstrously large, you'll never be able to keep them up to date. So they want to be at the right level, as high a level as you can, so that you've got something which is easy to understand, easy to update and maintain, and highly effective in terms of showing you what's going on at any minute in time. So, visualizing the workflow. You'd start off by putting a framework together, and you would then start to populate that process through. So, so the framework really enables you to take the various work activities, the parts of your process, and drop them into a series of columns. But also, if you've got a variety of different departments that might be working through that process too, to show the individual departmental or other project activities that are running, and you can do those on the horizontal one. So, so let me give you an example. So if we were to take, at a reasonably high level, a manufacturing process, we'd streamlined it all up, so we've got ourselves a good starting position that we can then put our management visualization chart in place, our Kanban. Then the process might start with us specifying a particular requirement. That then goes into the design process. From that, we're then fabricating or manufacturing components, which then become assembled. We test them out, and once they've passed the commissioning test, they get packed and dispatched. Now, Kanban works with the Taiichi index card system, and there's a lot of free play here. We can basically customize and design our own systems to meet our own particular performance visualization criteria. So we have these very colorful cards. They all mean different things, and we can have information that's embedded on. So, so for example, if we were to take that first horizontal line, which might be some particular department or team role that is working on the project, then we would have our Kanban index cards that would be positioned in the various stages of work that they have currently reached at any particular time. And that will also be the case for these other activities that are running in parallel, or these other projects that are running in parallel through that same process. So we end up with these quite colourful looking display boards that give us an ability to move the card, which fundamentally is defining a task, through to through each of those particular staged activities. So as an example, we can use different colors for different things, but we can also have different information that we might collect on a card. So some cards might be able to give us some particular metrics associated with the performances that we're seeing around either across the whole production line process or in a particular part of it. What we can do is we can assign priorities to particular tasks where there might be bottlenecks, or there might be some corrective action that is needed to take place to overcome a backlog which might have occurred. Again, we can identify where we have a problem so that we can deploy resource to deal with it immediately. Rather than with the traditional system, wait until some considerable time later before we find out that it's occurred and the damage has already been done. We can set gateway criteria. This is maybe quality features or a checklist of things that need to have been completed before it can then move on to the next stage. As I said, we can use a variety of colors to indicate particular things. It might be bugs or debugging or end user interfaces or whatever it might be that we feel as though we need to differentiate out so that when we're looking at it, we got a better feel for some of the complexity and detail associated with what's going on. We could use avatars, but also a lot of Kanbans are without trying to make them too complex, and therefore you lose the power of the ease of understanding and ease of visibility. Break each of those particular functions, you know, like design or fabrication, down into the sort of key stages. In this case, I've just shown, you know, the work that's currently being done under the doing, but that's already been completed and therefore waiting to move on to the next stage. You could break it into the three, as we've shown before. So you've got stuff that's waiting, that's being worked on, and that's been done. Although more typically we use just the two, because in the column in front of it, you'll have all the items that are done. So you've got that visibility that they're now waiting to come through to be worked on. And any particular things that might require some expediting or other sort of special measures being taken to them. So we've got a framework that represents the processes that we are undertaking in our business to help us to manage that whole production process. And we have got a variety of different coloured cards that can contain different information that will help us to track and monitor particular projects and where specific activities are and at what stage, and whether there's any issues with them, that they are. Really, really powerful, and is in many ways much more spontaneous or more real time than the traditional Gantt chart can be. So let's just have a little look at sort of some of the things that you might see on an index card or a Kanban index card. There's obviously the main task that the card is associated with, the task description. Often cards are categorized by type, and that's often shown by a color code on the bottom of the card. So, you know, there could be things to do with testing, there could be things to do with design, there could be things to do with debugging, checking, etc. So again, it just gives you sort of a visual glance as to the sort of categories or the categories that you might want to use in your system and allocate a color code to. There'll be a unique ID number associated with it. Often the task priority is set, so we can see whether it's something that's trundling along in the background or needs to be fast-tracked. Where the higher the priority, the higher in the order, the listing vertically. So the things at the top are the highest priority and the things at the bottom are the lowest. So we're always working on the most important thing as displayed on the Kanban board. There's often a task progress tracker, so we can sort of see where we are, and sometimes you get sort of indicated number of hours that are associated with that task from a budget point of view. And you may even have particular individuals that are allocated to the task. So there's a variety of information that you can put on an index card as is appropriate to your situation and what you're trying to do, that enables those particular cards to be tracked and monitored as the jobs associated with them get done and the project progresses through the stages that are involved with it. And that project may be a particular contract that that your business has with a customer. It may be particular products that you're pulling through the system, and therefore these cards enable you to understand exactly what has and hasn't been done and where the individual tasks are in the overall scheme of things. So there isn't one master, one size fits all, one shape and design fits all. There's basically a framework that you can customize and develop to meet your own particular needs. So a Kanban board is a tool that is effective at easily communicating a large amount of information using cards, columns, colors, icons, and other visual indicators that will help you to understand and retain information. Most teams that use Kanban tools develop their own unique configurations, as I've just been saying, making it easier to manage processes and workflows that are important to helping their business run smoothly. The key to creating an effective Kanban system lies within its ease of use. Now, if you've not got one and you're not quite sure what it should look like, and just go on the internet, just sort of Google up Kanban boards, because there is every design under the sun that you could possibly imagine that's visible there. And there's companies that will design them for you. There are ones that you can look at free that other people have designed and developed and are happy to share. There is articles showing common types that are being used in different industries. So rather than necessarily start from scratch, you might want to have a little look to see what's already been done and then customize something along those lines. Just give you that bit more confidence and a better starting position. So teams that are most productive with Kanban tools are those that customize their boards to not only improve productivity and efficiency, but also to help them spot opportunities for improvement. So the way that you spot opportunities for improvement are basically by looking to see where you've got the problems occurring in the first place. But if you're running fairly smoothly and you're still wanting to squeeze more performance out of it, this is where the metrics come in. Because by monitoring the metrics and setting targets to try to have a more enhanced performance target and then look at what might need to be done in order to achieve that, can give you that opportunity to be continuously improving and evolving and driving the performance of your business up by using the Kanban boards to give you that source of information. So this is a concept known as continuous improvement, as I'm sure you know, and it's an integral aspect of the Kanban philosophy. In fact, it's an integral aspect of the Toyota production system, as well as the lean manufacturing genre, which is sort of how we're more familiar with it today. So, order and sequence of the cards. The steps on your board are, of course, unique to your given process. But there are some sort of ways and things that you might find quite useful. Make sure that when you put your framework together, as in the example I've just shown you recently, you're putting the steps in a sequential order. You know, what we had was specify on the left-hand side, and then the journey ran across the top in the sort of order that the business undertakes its operations. So specify was step 1, design was step 2, then the fabrication, the manufacture of the components, items from raw materials was the next step, then followed by assembly of all of those items, and then test. It sounds silly, but we're really wanting to look at how things are flowing through the business. So it's important that your board is set up in a way that also reflects the way in which the business is operating, so that we can more easily see how that flow is occurring. Try to only record the steps that take a significant amount of time. So if you've noticed, I put specify or design. I've not gone into all of the nitty-gritty steps associated with that. They're fairly high-level stages within which there would be some multiple tasks that would be undertaken, and therefore you would reflect that in the number of index cards and the data that you've got on them. Cards should be prioritized from top to bottom in a row. So the cards that you want to work on should be at the top, as I just mentioned. So you're always going to the highest priority task next, and therefore maximizing your time utilization, and you're focusing on the things that are going to give you the biggest biggest bang for your buck. It's useful to break down a backlog of work into different types, i.e. features and bugs for a particular team of developers. You know, in the case of others, it might be presentations, newsletters, web management, you know, as might be the case for a team of marketeers. Stating that the WIP is the work in progress limit. Stating the work in progress limit for each stage of work helps the team to decide on how many items it needs to be working on, and you can experiment with that limit value over time, and it can and should be adjusted so that you've got some confidence in having the right limit after you've been operating the system for a few weeks. Don't forget that work in progress is one of the key things that we're trying to control with the Kanban system, because it is absolutely directly associated with the amount of muda or waste that comes along. The more items of stock or work that you've got in progress, the more clutter, the more complexity, the more delay, and the more some of those other wastes kick in. So we're really, really trying to manage the amount of work that we have got in progress at any one time through the factory. It is at the core of what we're trying to achieve here. So back on to the next point. Make sure team members are pulling, not pushing. In a lot of manufacturing processes, the systems work on a push basis, not a pull basis. So push basis is really trying to maximize the capacity of the business or the factory. So rather than have people sat around part idle, what you would do is you would want to keep them busy all the time. So you're pushing raw materials through, keeping them busy all the time, getting as much production for the paid hours that you're spending your money on as you can. Now, in many cases, that capacity you have might very well be greater than the number of sales that you're achieving. So it's a system which is what we call making for stock, because it goes into stock if you haven't got it sold. And if sales dip or are slow, you can build up a large stockpile. All that money tied up, that is just sat around with no customers to want to buy it, and some significant risk associated with them. Not only that, but there's a high degree of work in progress and a much more significant amount of muda or waste going on. So you've got very poor levels of efficiency in the factory as a result of that approach. So the lean manufacturing one is don't push, pull. So when you get a sale, the Kanban card, index cards go out and basically collect the items, the raw materials that are needed, and pull them through the relevant work that needs to be done to them to achieve that sale. And if there's a bit of idle time, then that sometimes is reused for other things. So we're looking at pull systems, not push systems. So make sure team members are pulling new items for themselves after they've completed work on a previous task. So one of the real powers of everybody seeing the Kanban board is nobody's sat around waiting to be told to do the next job. The Kanban board is displaying there is another job to be done, and whoever's responsible for doing it should themselves identify that and get on with it. So the middle steps, like implementing and validating work, are often divided into subcolumns. The right column of each step holds cards that have completed that step, showing that they're ready to move to the next person, which was that a split that I showed you in the different types of cards that we're going. Well, we've got the doing and done columns that might sit under these particular stages of the business process. So Kanban board visibility. Kanban, as we've mentioned, the Kanban board should be highly visible, and the more visible it is, the better it is going to be. So a Kanban board easily communicates a variety of things. Primarily, what's the work in progress limit, and we can compare where we are against that. It can communicate how the team's doing in terms of numbers of items that are done as opposed to being worked on. We can identify numbers of blockers and other activities that might be causing us to reallocate resource to solve the problem. What focal points should be addressed during the daily stand-up. So typically where you've got a series of Kanban boards, physical ones that are on a wall or on a display stand, at the start of shift or the start of day, everybody will gather around and just have a quick look at where they were so that they can get straight into getting the system up and running quickly and effectively. And it may be that periodically through the day, particularly at times challenging, you get back around that board again and just sort of revisit it. That would happen more if there have been a whole series of blockers or problems, or some issue with the backlog not being able to be got back down under control, where resources were needing to be expedited and reallocated in a way that met that primary goal. So the live view of the process also lets management understand what the team is doing. It provides a sense of comfort that work is under control and an insight into whether risks were taken into consideration or not. And if there are problems, the board reflects this for everyone viewing it. So there is always maximum transparency. Unlike you can get with the traditional Gantt chart, where stuff can be going on and there is no formal mechanism often to alert all those that might need to know in order to be able to deal with it. So, purpose of a Kanban board. Fundamentally, the purpose of using the board is to make the team members able to sort of self-organize rather than them having to receive continuous supervision. While achieving that may take some time, the intermediate goal in the day-to-day activities of the team is for them to pull the right work at the right time in the right sequence for themselves. The board is the means by which they gain their instructions and information, rather than a supervisor or manager continually having to tell them. The board belongs to the team. It is foremost not a project management tool, but actually it's an effective management tool. But it's a tool for the team and their stakeholders. So it takes some of the responsibility and the pressure and the risk off the project manager, because it's empowering and giving the information to the team to self-manage. And they can be incredibly powerful when you get teams of people that really engage with that and make it their own. So some of the sort of benefits that you might expect off the back of that: it builds cooperation through daily meetings, walking the board as it's often referred to, gives you this real-time instant visibility of progress at any moment in time. It gives you a balance between demand against throughput. And we can get sort of a means by which we can avoid this stopping, starting type of arrangement going, where stuff gets sort of started then left for a while. And so the focus really is on getting things underway and done and completed in a timely and well organized manner. It very much is part of this lean philosophy, where less work in progress is less risk, greater flexibility, and actually less waste. It drives close collaboration because it's visible to everybody. So what you're doing is visible to everybody else, as is what they're doing visible to you. And it's an aid to helping teams become self-organizing, which to me is one of the most powerful of the benefits that I see associated with it. What we're also able to do is swarm around blockers to facilitate a resolution. So if something goes wrong, we can redeploy resources to deal with that situation straight away and overcome it quickly. And therefore we haven't got the delays and the damage that comes from that. And recovery is quicker, easier, and cheaper. But it also helps us to identify bottlenecks as well as areas of waste. Bottlenecks because a bottleneck is something which takes longer to do, is a slower activity, or is being done more slowly than others. So if you've got a series of things that are moving quite quickly and they hit something that's moving slowly, they will build up in front of it. You'll get this bottleneck stockpile, and they really, really stand out. And the Kanban boards make that so visible, where you've got lots and lots and lots of stuff that's done, waiting to move into a process which just has not got the capacity to deal with the volume that is coming at it. So identifying bottlenecks, which are often the critical rate determinant of the throughput. So you can only go as fast as your slowest bottleneck. So you really, really need to know where they are and get them dealt with as soon as you can, because by increasing the capacity and reducing the bottleneck, the whole throughput rate goes up. And it provides metrics that can assist future estimations. So quite a powerful range of benefits that are available. Okay, so the Kanban board method, although the Kanban method originated as a measure of sort of stock management in manufacturing and the Toyota manufacturing, the goal of Kanban applied to knowledge work, particularly in sort of system software, remains the same. So it's basically there to visualize the work, to limit the work in progress, and to optimize the flow. But it also gives us this ability to continuously identify where there are opportunities for improvement and to remove waste. So, as we now are in COVID, we're much more communicating via virtual means, I thought it would be worth just briefly to touch on how Kanban principles can be used by virtual teams and sort of some of the pros and cons associated with them. So I'll just whip through this bit fairly quickly, as aware that we're sort of getting close to the end of time. You know, hopefully it'll be of use to you. Particularly if you haven't got any physical Kanban set up and you're now looking at coordinating a number of remote individuals or teams together, and you're trying to get a Kanban system set up, then that might be quite a powerful way in which you can do it. So, physical versus digital Kanban boards. Some teams will use a physical wall, a whiteboard, a screen, or even a purpose-built board, while other teams will utilize software. Both have advantages and drawbacks, as with everything. So physical boards are known to provide teams with a tangible, visceral experience, while digital boards have the perk of being possible to access by anyone and from anywhere, offering more flexibility and allow teams to be dispersed or from work at home. So whatever your preference, try and have a go at both so that it's possible to enjoy the best of both worlds, would be my advice. To have, for instance, team members updating a physical board and the project manager updating the digital board to utilize its superior automatic reports might be a very powerful and positive way to progress. So online Kanban tools provide instant project visibility for team members in different locations and among teams working on projects with a variety of complex moving parts and pieces, such as software development teams and business project teams. So using a virtual Kanban tool, teams can streamline processes, as we've been discussing, and reduce the amount of time it takes to complete a project, thus reducing the cost. Kanban tools allow you to measure how work moves through your process, so your team can leverage metrics to continuously improve. There are many online Kanban tools. Some are free to use, while others offer more features and functionalities that are part of a paid subscription basis. A specific challenge associated with virtual teams is workflow management. It can be difficult for project managers to keep track of tasks in process and to tell whether team members are over or underworked. Along with the best practices for virtual teams, like keeping lines of communication open and establishing shared goals, Kanban tool offers visibility so that the project manager can plan, organize, and prioritize up and coming work. Kanban boards grow with the team as well as an organization's team and can be set up so that individuals can see the status of everyone's work in one Kanban board across boards as is needed. A centralized place for work to live so that team members are not wasting time by searching emails and folders for necessary documents and images also offers a contextual work collaboration. And many small businesses have got servers where they can centralize that sort of information and it can be readily accessible through the cloud. Collaborators can share Kanban cards with one another with documents and images attached, quickly notifying one another of any new information with @mentions in comment threads. Kanban tools are highly effective at identifying bottlenecks as we've been discussing, that team members may be too busy to mention or might not even have noticed. Other known challenges sort of working in virtual teams include communication breakdowns, trust issues. Now, trust seems to be, in my experience, one of the biggest hurdles and barriers where the managers and business owners see temptation for those working remotely and sort of aren't always able to fully trust them in every situation. Sometimes rightly, sometimes not, but it can be one of the barriers that I see that is holding back the technology. Scheduling conflicts where an individual has wanted to be working on more than one thing at the same time, and productivity concerns, where, which might result in sort of micromanaging. So as we sort of come to the end of the webinar, really those sort of challenges facing virtual teams, rather than reverting back to the old ways of doing business, you can directly address the challenges of managing virtual teams by taking proactive steps to ensure teams have what they need to succeed. When you successfully identify and remedy remote workplace issues, you can build a virtual team that's both collaborative and connected, and I absolutely have seen that. So that sort of covers the primary topics for today. I hope that you found that interesting, where we've looked at the origins of the Kanban or the signboard in terms of the retail side of things in Japan. We've looked at how Taiichi Ohno has grabbed hold of that concept and developed it further to create a phenomenal communication system that has transformed the Toyota motor company into one of the world leaders that we have today, and brought about an understanding and a set of tools that we refer to as the Toyota production system, or more commonly lean manufacturing. We've then also seen how in more recent years that Kanban and Kanban boards and the Kanban method have been introduced to overcome software development industry challenges, so as to overcome some of the constraints of the traditional approach to project management by having highly visible activities that when something isn't quite working correctly, resources can be deployed in order to overcome them quickly. So with software development, where it's incredibly difficult to be able to plan for a project that nobody has ever done before, you can set up processes and monitor highly iterative, uncertain process activity in a way where you're continually trying to put the focus on getting the stuff that's important done quickly and well, and therefore overcoming some of the pitfalls that you might find otherwise. I'll put a little bit of further reading for you, but just Google Kanban and you will find there is loads and loads of information available for you. So I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found that it's given you a really good insight, not just to the history, the evolution, but now the application of Kanban. And I hope it's given you a little bit of insight and motivation to what the Kanban method is, how the Kanban board works, and the methodology that sits behind it. And it would be great if you could have a go at seeing if you can't use that on some aspects of your business activity. I wish you all the best as far as that goes. and really just wanted to pick up on any questions that anybody might have sent in. Peter, are you there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. Very interesting there. As I said before, we're here to answer as many questions as you've got. So if you've got any questions, do put them in the question function, and we'll go through those now. This is part of a series of workshops that we're running with, I think Agile is the next one, I believe. So do have a look at those coming up and get yourselves booked onto that one. So we've had a couple of questions just pop up now. I'm just bringing up it now. So the only things popping up in the question section at the moment is just thanks for the interesting presentation and people looking forward to the Agile one. So thank you very much, everybody there, for the feedback. It's always good to have good feedback. So it doesn't look like we've got any questions on Kanban. So it just leaves me really to say thank you very much, Steve, for today's presentation, and thank you everybody for attending today's session. Hopefully it was very useful, and we'll see you in the future sessions going forward. Do take a look at those other sessions that we've got scheduled in. As I say, we have one on Agile as part of a series of sessions with Kanban and then on to Agile. We also have many other different workshops as well, so do have a look at what those are. Take a look at growmysme.co.uk and have a look at the events section there. But as I say, thank you very much, Steve, for today, and thank you everybody for attending.
Thanks now.